The Notcast, life, love and misery and deep shit.
Do you ever wonder, what the fuck am I doing here? Is this it? Maybe you've got the car, career, house, family and friends, everything that should make you happy. But still, there's this tenacious sense of being trapped, stuck, lost, or just a bit bloody empty. Welcome to the Notcast, where two therapist coaches, aka theracoaches, lay bare their psycho-spiritual journey of struggle, strife, and realization in their soul search for the keys to a happier, more fulfilling life.
Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to episode 19 of the Notcast. Why can't I find my soulmate? 5 reasons why you haven't found true love yet.
Whoop whoop.
Our Valentine's episode.
Will this come up? When will this come up? Will it be just before Valentine's Day?
Is it on the week of Valentine's or the week before? I'm not sure.
I can't remember. I'm just going to say yes.
Yes.
Yes, he says confidently.
Authoritatively.
It's around about that time. It's fine.
Yeah, something like that.
Whatever, it's our podcast.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So.
Soulmates and true love. Well,
Soulmates and true love. Yes.
I really struggled with this one. Quite a bit. I don't know. When we were coming up with the title, I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And then every time I sat with it, it was like, computer says no. Computer says no. And I think I might know why. I think, like, for me, the term soulmate, I was like, yeah, I had a real issue with that. Like, I think in the past, I didn't really believe there was a thing called a soulmate. So I was like, and in my mind, the kind of stereotype of a soulmate is like the one.
Yeah. That
one person who you just have to find, like, and like they'll be there one day, but you just have to find them, or maybe not. And maybe you know, all that stuff basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I don't believe that. Like that stuff doesn't make sense to me anymore. So I went to Google, my friend.
Yes.
And I was like, well, like, what are the different interpretations of soulmate? And here are some of the things that came up. A person ideally suited as a close friend or partner. Perfectly suited in temperament was another one. I thought it was a bit weird, but it kind of makes sense, because if you've got a similar temperament to someone, it's like, you see eye to eye. So I guess that's what I heard in that. Yeah, because the other one was like strongly resembles another in attitude and beliefs. But the one that really struck it for me, I guess, was a feeling of deep natural affinity.
Mm-hmm.
And when I thought about that, I thought, so the way I kind of see soulmates now, again, and it depends how spiritual you get, because one way of thinking about it is like, it's all predetermined and we're supposed to meet these people. And the other way is like, none of that's true. Still currently on the fence. But with the affinity thing, I suppose, for me, I guess the way I see it now, it's like, who's to say that there's just one soulmate?
Oh yeah, I definitely believe that. Well, yeah, for me, I definitely don't believe that there's just one soulmate.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a massive change for me, because like you, honestly, it used to be that thing of it's the one. And what if I don't find that one? And I have to search through every man I come across until I find this elusive soulmate that I'm supposed to be with for the rest of my life. But my spiritual understanding and what feels true to me is that my soulmate can come in many different forms as well. Like, I feel like I have soulmate affinity with some of my friends. I don't think it's just a romantic, kind of thing that lasts forever. I feel like soulmates can come into your life and leave your life because they're there for a set amount of time. Then I don't think they're there forever just because they're your soulmate.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. That's with that part of it. That's where I got to with it. It was like, I feel like I've had relationships of all forms in my life where there's been some soulmateness, some soulmatery, about it. And some of those people are still in my life, and some of those people, you know, when I look back, they were there for a time, and well, either things haven't ended well or we've drifted apart or whatever. But at the time, I can see that there was that kind of affinity, that resonance, and then it almost sounds a bit mechanical, but that it's like it served its purpose. It helped us grow or support each other during that time, and then literally we may have grown apart.
Yeah.
And I guess like now when I think about that kind, like if I think about it like that, that doesn't seem like so much of a bad thing anymore. It seems like, well, it's kind of how it works, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to switch on full on woo woo.
Of course you are.
Of course I am. And yeah, because that is my understanding, that, you know, the people that we have those soul contracts with, they're in our life for, it could be forever. It could be for a day, a month, a year, 2, 10, but that's not determined by me, you know? And yeah, it could be in any form of relationship. And once it has served its purpose, it's done. I feel like those soul relationships, those soulmate relationships that have shown up in my life are always about reflecting an aspect of me that needs healing or working on, you know, that for me, that connection is a soul connection because it's going to do some of that work. It's like a mirror relationship. So definitely understand soulmate on a whole different level. It's just like,
yeah. And that's definitely been my experience more. Well, the way I think about that kind of thing and relationships now, like looking back, before it was easy to be judgmental, like they shouldn't have been like this and that shouldn't have been like that. But when I look at it in that mirror sense, it's like, oh, actually, well, what did that bring out in me?
yeah,
You know? And why did I react like that? And how, looking back on it, how would I like to have reacted? And what stopped me? And, you know, whether it's, well, what I can see now is that in a way, those interactions, those relationships were teaching me something. And whether I choose to believe that was because of some divine influence or that's just psychology, biology, whatever, happenstance, shit happens, I don't know. But either way, it was a lesson.
yeah,
right?
Right.
I had those buttons there and I happened to be with someone who was pushing them.
Yep.
They're still my buttons, obviously, to resolve.
Yeah. Right. And I guess that's the thing. That's what I've learned. Like, there are buttons that I have to resolve. There's healing that I needed to do within myself. And if one of those relationships had just become this lifetime relationship, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have seen those things.
Yeah.
So.
And I do wonder if it's possible, because, you know, you hear about those people that I remember even, you know, growing up, there was a guy I knew whose parents had got together at like 16 and they've been together forever.
Yeah.
And I do think that's possible, but you know, and this is just anecdotally hearing from stories I've heard, it's people who do that, assuming they're not fucking miserable forever, like they grow together, right?
Yep.
So then there's that transition that happens as part of that partnership, rather than say separating when one grows or both grow.
Yes. Yes.
Well, for full disclosure, this is entirely conjecture when looking at my previous relationship history.
Thank you for clarifying, David.
Just to be fully transparent.
Oh, dear me. Yeah. A lot came up for me when I looked at this. And actually, it made me realize that the concept that I had of true love and a soulmate was such a big part of my, especially like teenage years, because it felt like the thing that was going to rescue me. It was like such a big fantasy of mine. Like when I reflected on it, I remember fantasizing so much about this hero that was going to come along and be my true love and take me away from all the misery and, you know, fix the shit. Reality was very different. Just saying. But I think that's where I got lost in those concepts of, you know, there's this love that's completely different. It's true love. And then when I was a teenager, I can remember things like with friends kind of going, oh my God, he bought you a teddy bear for Valentine's. It must be your true love. It just must be your soulmate. Oh.
It's a Beanie Baby as well. It must be real love.
It must be real love. It's just like never let go of him. But yeah, I think for lots of people, it's this fantasy. And what I've realized from my journey is that if I have that bigger fantasy, the reality is never going to match up to it. Because it just can't be, which forever leads to disappointment.
Well, it's funny when you talk about that, because that was my first point, my first reason for why you haven't found true love was love is a magic pill to you. It's something that solves all your problems. You know, and my backup point, which was...
I see, you see.
which was closely aligned to that, was the other thing similar thing you talked to, which is you want a savior rather than a partner.
Yep.
And this was definitely my experience. Well, I'd love to say only when I was a teenager, like no, far beyond then. But like I remember vividly, I don't remember when it was. I was 16, 17 and I was in a relationship and I was unhappy. It didn't start out that way. It started out great. Mm-hmm. But then I became unhappy over time. And I didn't like what it looked like to me was that it was because of the relationship. It was because of her.
Yeah. And,
but I kind of felt trapped in the whole thing. I didn't really feel like I could leave, but I was, I got stuck in that place. And then I remember getting interested in somebody else. But it was, it wasn't somebody actually that I knew really. It was this person who was like in a class of mine who I'd like seen around but knew nothing about. But that was perfect because it was then they could be like the magical savior that I could project all this stuff on. Oh my God, it'd be so different if I was with them.
Yeah.
But what was interesting for me was I actually got to see the reality of that because, like, long story short, we ended up on a school trip together, and I actually broke up with my girlfriend at the time, and then I remember confessing my love to this person. Of course, like she wasn't interested, but yeah, it left me in this place of like, oh fuck, like what now? Like now I haven't got anywhere to go. That was like proper face the dragon shit. And I can see it now. It's like in a way it helped me get out of the situation I was in and face the difficult stuff. But I don't think I understood it at that level. But it's because why didn't it work? Because I was expecting to, I'd confess my love and she'd be like, oh my God, me too. And we'd run off into the sunset together. It's like, it doesn't work like that.
No, absolutely. I definitely second that. That was definitely close to one of the points I had as well. Because I think that's a big thing. Go investigate that. People. Yeah. So I'm going to go with...
Just out of interest, how many points have you got this time? 24? 19?
About 21.
Fuck's sake.
What can I say? I'm all about the love.
To be fair, when I look at my spreadsheet, I've probably got about, I don't know, I've probably got about 30.
Yes. Okay.
But some of them are they're so very similar. Like that's why I've grouped them together. Like they're not actually different points. They're all like different ways of wording the same point. That's my defense.
Whatever. Yeah. You keep telling yourself that you're coming up with 5 points.
I've committed to 5 points, all right?
Okay. We shall see. You already used a backup point.
I've committed to them until I change them.
Exactly. Not very committed then.
Anyway, moving swiftly on, back to your point.
Oh, okay. So, I don't love me.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Fuck off. That was so insincere. Oh, okay. Like, yeah. When I didn't love myself, I was consistently looking for somebody else to come along and fill that gap and make me feel this love make me feel lovable, having that lovability factor. It's like, how can I really know what love feels like if I'm not loving myself? So even if it did come along, how would I know? I didn't love myself. Like, I was in a serious space of self-loathing. So it's like, even if love had come along, I wouldn't have accepted it for what it was. I would have just gone, what the fuck do you want from me? Why are you being like that? So it was this search for something outside of me when the feeling of love can only come from within me. But if I don't even want to love myself, then how am I ever going to believe that somebody else wants to love me?
Yeah.
So I think that exploration around self-love and loving yourself and knowing that feeling comes from you, like nobody needs to give you love, like for you to have love within you, and nobody can take away the depth of the love that I either share with them or show them. So I don't need to rely on something that's outside of me.
Yeah.
But I really, it shifted when I realized that I'm in a more loving space with myself.
No, I love that. And that follows nicely onto one of my points. The way I phrased it, because one of my backup points.
Oh, I see.
One of my backup points was you don't love and accept yourself. But the way I phrased it in the end was you won't let yourself be loved.
Ah, yes.
The reason I ended up phrasing it like that was because I didn't, that's what was going on, and I didn't see it. Like, it would look to me like there was a problem with the relationship, say. But when I look back consistently in relationships, actually it was to do with what you talked about, right? I didn't actually accept myself. I didn't have that love for myself. I didn't like myself very much.
Yeah.
Now, the way it looked to me, I didn't know that. It was just, I'm just not good enough. It was like, I'm okay, but
Yep.
there was all this like, conditional stuff around it. But the way that would play out, I didn't know how to accept. I didn't know how to be loved because I didn't know how to love myself. I mean, I was very good at taking things the wrong way and being hurt by certain things, but in terms of accepting love, no, I wasn't. And I think it would even come out in little ways where, like, if they complimented me, I'd like make a joke out of it or like throw it back at them, kind of thing. And I thought I was being funny, but actually I was being self-protective.
Yeah.
Because it was that discomfort. And like, what it was, one ex particular said to me, she was like, do you know, it's really difficult for me to say stuff like that when you go and do that. And it started to make me realize, oh shit, like I'm thinking this is funny when I'm doing this because I'm turning it into a banter, but actually I'm just shooting you down. You're being really vulnerable.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, this is genuine. And then I'm shooting it down. Like, I'm training you not to do that. And then I'm wondering why I'm not feeling the love.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But underneath it all was that whole, because, I didn't feel comfortable with that. It wasn't okay to accept the love because I didn't love myself.
I hear that. The way I'd worded it was I couldn't receive the love. Yeah. Because I think they're really interesting points to look at. And I really urge people to look at that part of it. Are you able to receive the love or accept the love or, let it in? I think that's really, really important, because no matter how much love somebody shines on you, you're not going to acknowledge it if you can't receive it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely important point. The second one is you're stuck in a distorted version of love.
Tell me more.
So my primary example of a loving relationship was a completely dysfunctional, fucked up relationship.
Sounds delicious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. However, that became my model of relationships and what love looks like.
Yeah.
And that meant that for me, love included hurt, humiliation, putting down, non-acceptance, judgment, and all of those things. And it's like, I really have had to work very, very hard on myself and my understanding of what love actually is.
Mm.
Yeah. To be able to change those things.
Mm.
Because to be fair, it didn't make sense to me as such. Like for a long, long time, it's like, love is supposed to be this magical thing that everybody talks about. And yet when I'm in that space, it doesn't feel like that. It's not like that. And I really believed things like, obviously what I learned, the biggest thing I learned is that it's okay for people to treat you like shit and for you to put up with it.
Yeah.
You know, and that is definitely not love. So yeah, I think a reflection and investigation of where has love shown up in your life? How has it shown up? What have you learned from that? And what has it shown you? And actually, is that really what love looks like? I feel like that is firstly, that is an inquiry I've done for myself. My clients go on that journey, and I really feel it's an important thing to ask. So that's my second point.
Yeah. Well, again, one of my backup points.
Oh, here we go.
But to be fair, I wasn't entirely happy with the 5 that I chose anyway, if I'm entirely honest.
You see the excuses, people.
You wait till we get off air, damn it.
Threat or promise?
So one of my backup points was you confuse infatuation for love.
Yes.
And because when I was looking at, okay, well, what's true love? Because I know we talked about the soulmate thing, and then I was like, well, what's true love then? What does Google say true love is versus love? Mm-hmm. And things that came up are the more spiritual principles, like unconditional, like fully accepting, being able to be yourself, being a team, commitment, values driven, respect. Like it's all this.
Yeah.
It's all this sense of oneness and acceptance and okayness, and it's not this thing that we're trying to get. It's not this reward.
Yeah.
But of course, that's fine when you're in the honeymoon period.
Absolutely.
And then it then it wears off.
Yeah.
And then it disappears.
Yep.
And I suppose that tenuously, in a way, would link to my next point, which is settling for comfortable misery.
Oh yes, been there, done that.
Well, and this is something that I would get into through not really understanding, I guess, what love was and what a good relationship could be. Almost want to say should be, but could be. Mm-hmm. After the honeymoon period would kind of wear off, it'd be like, all right, well, now we've got to deal with the realities of you and me and our stuff interacting.
Damn it.
Yeah. And then when I add in, if I don't know how to be loved, and I don't really like myself, and then I also am thinking that I don't know, I would end up in a place of not knowing what to do about the whole thing. But instead of kind of facing it head on, which could be either, trying to work through it, or it could be then, okay, we can't work through it, so I need to leave. It was like, well, let's coast.
Yeah.
And almost, it's very passive. It's like, I'm just hoping it'll improve.
Yep.
And I don't think that was really, I mean, I don't think it was a conscious decision. Like, I'm going to choose the passive thing and just hope that this, because that would have almost been an active choice. It was like, that seemed like the only thing available to me, but it left me in this space of like, well, just, fear and misery. I mean, I call it comfortable misery because it's comfortable because it seems safer, but not happy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Having resided in that space for 14 years.
It's a long time being in that space.
It was a long time being in that space, but that I had to completely change my understanding of love and relationship. It's like, love is not putting up with shit and just enduring it. That's not what love looks like. Because love is about for me anyway, about two people cheerleading each other to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah. And I think that can be difficult sometimes, or at least it has in my experience, because like for me, there can be this space where it's like, is it me or is it you? Like, what's the reason this isn't working?
The blame game.
Yeah, exactly. It's the blame game, right? But then I, to try and kind of amble my way through this, like sometimes somebody is not showing up the best way.
Yeah.
And I know, but then, blame's not the answer. But then sometimes, like I've been in relationships where I've definitely been the difficult one, or the arsehole, or not in the right, okay, or maybe not showing up the best way I could. But then I've also been in relationships where, at least it seemed to me like I've done everything I can and yet still can't get to that place of having each other's back and trying to get to the same place. And I suppose coming back to my point about comfortable misery, now looking back, I was going to say the sensible answer, but really I guess the ultimate answer is, well, I've got to leave, really, because accepting this is kind of sapping my soul.
Yeah.
But it took a while for that to make sense, I think, because I was scared. So I was like staying, either trying to make it work or kind of just, again, hoping maybe something would change.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I get that. Because I used to hope that, like, without actually doing anything, that something might just change by itself, which, as we both know, doesn't happen. It just really doesn't work like that. So yeah, I get that. So I'm going to go for my next one, because I feel like all of them interweave today quite a lot, just because that's what makes sense, right? That's what makes sense, because I feel like that getting to the love place is a journey that doesn't really stop. So my next one is zero healing has been done. Seriously, like dragging the relationship baggage and shit from one relationship to another really is not useful. And I have done it, and I have had it done to me by other people. And it's just like, no, like you are projecting your shit left, right, and center all over this relationship. I think healing is such an important part and such a necessary part. I think it's forgotten too easily, that if we just go from relationship to relationship without doing any of the understanding and the work around the healing of what didn't work, we're taking that wound straight into another relationship without actually healing the wound. So inevitably the wound opens up again. And for me, it's been even worse, like when it's then happened in another relationship, because then I'm telling myself a story that this is just going to be the shape of every relationship. But I feel like any relationship, not just, a love relationship or a romantic love relationship, there's healing to be done and learning to be done when a relationship finishes or ends, or you end it, or whatever way, It's definitely a loss on some level, whether it was good or bad.
Yeah.
And when I haven't taken the time to go through the healing process, I've taken all the pain into the next relationship and had my barriers up and been defended and not been able to trust or be open or be vulnerable, because I've just projected all of the stuff from the last relationship straight onto the next person.
Yeah.
And they don't even have an idea. They don't even know what's going on. It's just like, oh my God, where the fuck did that come from? But then I'm making assumptions about the relationship and about the person. So I really, truly urge people to understand where the healing needs to be done.
And I think that can be, I get that and I agree. Though I think that can be a difficult one, because sometimes we're not always aware. Like I know, I've found in certain relationships, certain things have only become consciously obvious to me because of that relationship.
Yeah.
because of the way that person interacted with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because say in a previous relationship, because the dynamic was different, like that, you know, that trait played out differently, or it wasn't an issue. And so it wasn't necessarily that I've carried it wasn't necessarily that the previous relationship damaged me in a way that I needed to heal. It's like that stuff was still my stuff. It's just, I don't know, it snuck in as a stowaway, if you like.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And I think that's the importance of just having practices of reflection when things change. I think it's really, really important. When anything changes in my life, I reflect on what that change means for me and like what's coming up for me. So I just feel like that's a really important space to create.
Yeah. Well, as you were talking, and I don't know if it's linked, but what came to my mind was actually a point I not had on my list. Today's going very strangely. Was that, not realizing that love comes from within, that it's about loving, that you experience love by loving.
Yeah.
And I suppose it links to my first point in a way, thinking that love is a magic pill. It's like love is this thing that will solve all my problems. But it was like, even that comes, at least in my mind, it's that sense of when I get the relationship, the love will be given to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And something that I definitely noticed in my last relationship, for example, like I made a conscious effort. So I was working on myself more, was a lot more aware of a bunch of this stuff. And so I made a conscious effort to be more loving.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed my whole experience, really, because I was no longer like previously in relationships. I know I would have shared before. It was almost like once I've got the relationship, it was like, oh, tick. Now I can get on with trying to sort out my head and my bullshit. Whereas this was different. And that's when I really saw it's, oh, hang on a minute. When I love to love, and when I am loving and I'm giving love, then I feel good. And actually, when I do that, I'm more likely to get the love back, funnily enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that strange?
Yeah. Well, but again, it did seem strange though. That's the thing. When I saw love as this thing, which love is something that's created when somebody loves me.
Yeah, right.
Even though I don't trust them to love me because I don't love myself, but we'll ignore that.
Yeah. Let's leave that bit to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that.
I experienced this not long ago. There's a friend of mine that was going through a difficult time, and sure it's a common experience for a number of people, but like I'd be messaging people, and then if you get a message back, it makes you message.
Mm-hmm.
And this friend of mine was going through a tough time, but I'd message her at points and I wouldn't get a reply. And I'd be like, what's that about? And almost start to take it personally. But then I started to see, oh, hang on a minute. She's having a bad time. This is nothing to do with me. And I realized actually I'm not messaging to get a reply. I'm messaging to send love, and because I enjoy messaging.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw it like that, like, I don't know, something shifted in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to message her and send her stuff and sometimes not get anything back for a week or so or longer. But then what was interesting was I realized after a while, she was very appreciative of that. And she was always, I'm really sorry the stuff's going on. But actually, we now have a much better relationship as a result of that. Because I think in the past, what would have happened if I hadn't have got anything back in my head, I'd been going, what's going on for her? Well, I'm not going to message then because and I'd have probably like fronted it like that, but I'd have actually been hurt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I get that. I totally get that. Which I feel leads nicely into my next one.
Do tell.
How loving is the relationship you have with yourself?
Ooh, tell me more.
This really is one of the biggest things that I've had to work on, because I really didn't understand the concept of like having a relationship with myself. And is also one of the biggest things that comes up with clients when I work with them. It's like there is no model of a relationship. Like the way I've built a loving model of a relationship is slowly and painfully through building a relationship with myself that is loving. And it was slowly and painful because it was so fucking messy to get there because my examples were messy. But that whole thing about being able to give the love without my own bullshit getting in the way really only landed once I started to build that relationship with myself and understand, actually, from that, I built up a picture of what I really want and need from a relationship.
Mm.
You know, and it's like, I need to be able to treat myself like that first.
Yeah.
Because before it was like, oh my God, I need you to treat me. I need you to do all these things for me and treat me in all these ways, because I'm not giving that to myself. So I need that somebody else to do that for me so that I can validate myself and accept, you know, that this is how it is. And it's like, no, I was never going to recognize it until I was able to give that to myself, until I was able to go, actually, these things really don't work for me in the relationship I have with myself. This is how I'd like to be treated. And I treat myself like that. And actually, that doesn't feel very good. So then that informs me that actually in other relationships, when I've let it happen before, it's because I've not been in that space with myself. And so rather than having this massive buildup of things that I don't want in relationships or in love, I now know what I do want and how I want that to feel, because I have that feeling within myself in the relationship I have with me. So I know it's attainable. I know it's a thing. I know it's real. It's not some concept that's out there of this relationship that, you know, that is a Hollywood relationship. But it's also taught me that a relationship is a co-creation. I have fully created the relationship I have with myself.
Yeah.
Which means in any other relationship, if I land in a space where someone doesn't want to participate in the co-creation, I know that the relationship isn't for me. So, yeah, I think it's really, really fundamental to have an understanding of your model of relationship.
No, I resonate with that. And I definitely feel that's something that I've had to learn as I go. You know, and in all honesty, some of what, if not a lot of what I've learned has been either through books or just hanging out with people like on training courses and stuff like that, and just seeing how people, especially if there's co-hosts and stuff like that, and seeing how they interact, seeing how other people treat other people, right? Or again, like reading about it and watching videos, and it's like, oh, it can be like that.
Yeah, right.
Like some of it's let me try that out. But yeah, because otherwise, I think if you don't have a model for it, then you don't necessarily know what's possible, right? Unless you've experienced it in some sense.
Yep.
And what you were saying leads on to one of my points, which is we'd be happy if only you do X.
Yes.
I'd be happy if only you do X. And it's this whole idea of I'm unhappy, you've got to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I suppose there was, in a way, I had a couple of flavors of this. The obvious one was if I was in a difficult relationship and the other person, especially if I was in someone who could be quite critical or quite cruel even. For me, it was more obvious falling for that, because it's almost like, well, yeah, if you stop being a fucking bitch, I'll be happier.
Yeah.
But that still misses the point of like, hang on a minute, like I still need you to change. Like I'm still like I mean, for argument's sake, the question is, well, if they're being that bloody horrible to me, why am I staying?
Yep.
And of course, I wasn't asking myself that question, because the answer I was like, because then I'll be alone, because I won't find any better, because then reasons, right?
Yep.
But the other way it would play out was actually the more, I suppose, insidious way, which is if I'd had someone who was more accepting and actually, you know, where it wasn't so, what's the word I'm looking for? Explosive's the wrong word, but you know what I mean? Because when that honeymoon period would wear off, I was still unhappy, but then I was still projecting it onto them, just in a different way.
Yeah.
I would still find things that they, or even if it was just, I don't know, but it's obviously just not working. Like I need to be on my own.
I'm not made for relationships. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but and I think actually where it would often, in that sense, what would happen, I'd go through this period of being unhappy, and then my mind would start looking elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I might not necessarily go somewhere else, but it would be like, that would be the, I realise now that was my mind saying, no, if you're with this person or you're with someone else better, someone else different,
Yeah.
then these problems will disappear. But it's back to the same thing we've been talking about. It's not. It's because I don't like myself very much.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's not weird really. I was going to say it's weird that it all comes back to the same thing, but I'm sure you and I both know that it's not. So I'm not going to bother saying that. Although I just said it. But anyway. Yeah. Yeah. So the work, people, if you haven't realised, is on yourself. Just highlighting that.
Too long did it read. Do the work.
Yeah. There is no escaping that. Okay. So now I'm going, which one should I do next? Okay. Yeah. What is the motivation? That I think it's really important to understand your motivation for true love and soulmate. It's like, what, for what purpose?
Yeah.
What's it going to bring you? Because there's this fantasy. Actually, it's going to give me something. So for me, it's really about what is the motivation behind that? What is my motivation for wanting true love and soulmate? And normally, for me, it's because there's a serious lack within me somewhere, or a lack within my life, and I want to fill it. And I think I'm going to fill it by inviting somebody else into my life.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, that's really going to work. So yeah, that's a very temporary and quite hurtful fix in some respects, because that's not what I needed at all. Really what I needed was to give myself those things rather than be in a relationship. And it was my fear, again, that stopped me really checking out with myself, that am I ready to be in this space that I'm kind of stepping into? And there's been several times on reflection where I haven't been ready to step into a relationship, where I've gone from one horrifically abusive relationship straight into another relationship. And it's really because I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. So my motivation was not to feel the pain, but to move straight into another space that took me, for all intents and purposes, into what I thought was definitely would have described it as my soulmate true love relationship.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't. It really, really wasn't. But it totally stopped me dealing with the pain and devastation of being in a relationship that nearly killed me. I just went straight into another relationship. Yeah. It's like, let's not look at all of that stuff because I don't need to. So obviously, I dragged it straight into the other relationship. And I see this a lot, like people just jumping from relationship to relationship to relationship to relationship. And again, it's like, what is the motivation for that? What is the purpose in that? For what purpose are you getting into this relationship? Stop and ask yourself that question.
Yeah, hearing you talk, like, I know it took me a long time to realize I had a real terror about being alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I'd never been alone in my life. I have been, but still there was a real fear about it. But that was because underneath it was all this, like, I'm really not okay. Like, there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And being I guess on some level, the idea of being in a relationship was supposed to resolve that. Of course, it never did. Hence, the cycles that I've talked about. But being in that space of, oh shit, I'm now on my own again, my mind would start going, oh, how can I get away from this? It's like, oh, shiny thing. That feels good.
Yeah, let's go that way. Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I think for me, it was also partly like cultural pressure, like this thing that I was very much told that I'm a failure because I'm a single parent and I'm not in a relationship, and everybody's in a relationship and you should be married and this is how it should look.
Yeah.
So then it was like, oh my God, I'm such a failure. And now I'm alone and nobody's going to want me. So I'm just going to jump into any relationship. That's going to take away all of that. But yeah, that really didn't work. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, and I've done that. I've done that a couple of times, and I think you do get that initial, right, the dopamine hit and the rose tinted glasses, and oh my God, it's amazing. But it's yeah, it can quickly wear off, in my experience.
Yeah, very quickly.
Well, and then for me, with if then there's not an understanding of how all that stuff works, I think we end up attributing it to the wrong things. Like again, oh, it's them. They're not who I thought they were.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because it definitely wasn't what I needed or wanted or anything like that. So yeah, then it was just an out and out, well, then they're not the one.
Yeah.
They're not the soulmate. They're not the true love. Yeah. Rather than the understanding that actually it was never okay. Yeah.
So, closing thoughts on why you haven't found your soulmate and reasons why you haven't found true love yet.
Yeah. This was interesting when I was kind of thinking about the end point of this one. Because I guess for me, it's a thing about like really sit and have a reflection on what do you believe true love is? What do you believe a soulmate really is? And is that really what you want? Because for me, love is a beautiful connection between two people where you share. And it's an opportunity to kind of have a soul to soul connection that's real.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need labels like true love or soulmate. It's for me about just being in that feeling of love with somebody else.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I think it's Michael Neal who said it. Something like when he had this idea of what a relationship was. He said, and then he heard one day that the point of a relationship is to enjoy each other's company.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, oh, is it that simple?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it can be.
Yeah.
So my closing thoughts. Love starts within. It starts with you. Not outside.
Yeah.
And although there, arguably you could say there is some outside stuff, right? If you're just throwing love and they keep throwing shit, might be a bit difficult to keep throwing love that way. They're not impossible. But without going down that rabbit hole.
Well, interesting that you should say that though, because the one thing I had written down as the end thing was choose you.
Well, yeah, right?
Yeah.
Which is a good point, right? Because the question is like, if you're having shit constantly thrown at you, then why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that from a place of love or from a place of fear? And without trying to get all too pontificanty at the end of an episode, I do think there probably are times, right, where it makes sense to keep giving that love when you're getting shit thrown at you. I don't think there's a black and white answer, but I think it's worth asking the question. But I still come back to the love starts from within, and I do think I've really seen now for myself the best way to experience love. Be loving.
I just need to take a second to just take that in. Never thought I'd hear those words from you.
For context, Amy's saying this because when she first started talking about love, however long ago it was, I was like, all right, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. You see how far we've come, people. Yeah.
So, how many have we done? 19 episodes.
19. Yes.
Done and dusted.
Done and dusted. You've been listening to the Notcast podcast, Life, Love, Misery and Deep Shit with your TheraCoach hosts,
Amy Dave.
and David Bird.
Amy is a transformative spiritual and self-love coach and therapist who takes people on a powerful journey towards self-love and personal transformation. She empowers her clients to discover the truth of who they really are, their true purpose, and the truest expression of themselves, whilst enabling them to navigate life and its challenges with ease, grace, and above all, love. Create relationships that rock their world and let go of the toxic shit that holds them back. You can connect with Amy on her Facebook at facebook.com/amy.dave11. That's AMI.DAVE.11.
David is a transformative coach and hypnotherapist who guides his clients on a journey of self-exploration and transformation to smash the shit out of their mental stumbling blocks and send their emotional baggage packing, helping them to get back in the driver's seat, create a more powerful, loving connection to life, and unleash onto the world their bright, shining light of authentic give-a-fuckness. You can connect with David at his website, dbch.co.uk. That's dbch.co.uk.
The Notcast.